building new assets, fully outsourced. So Urban Utilities doesn't construct the assets itself. It actually engages through a panel, a series of sort of providers to design and then actually construct new assets and hand them over to us. In terms of maintenance, it's about 50-50. So currently our network or civil work is fully in-house, and the mechanical electrical, so the work that maintenance work that kind of happens in our treatment plants is currently provided by third parties. We're actually again, as part of this, it's absolutely one of the things that we're looking to do is actually improve our planning around that. So at the moment with our third parties, we typically kind of just give them on bulk, this is the work that we want to do, and then they kind of send us an invoice once they've completed the work, in terms of a bulk piece of work, say for example covering 3 months. In the future we ought to be able to manage that much more kind of actively in terms of the overall portfolio and be able to do that more granularly. In terms of numbers, I think finger in the air is about, we've got about I think in our works management area we've got about 460 employees from memory across service delivery in total. About 300 of those are kind of engaged in either planning or delivering the work. And in addition to that, we have through our subcontractors maybe 200 to 250 as part of an extended workforce.
Okay, thanks.
Martin?
Yeah, thanks again. So I'm just one sort of additional piece on that billing then. Is there a reason that those other groups are not in high affinity and that you therefore need this sort of ERP angle to provide a solution?
Yeah, so I think I guess like with any billing requirement, consumption-based billing or metered billing and how we manage for tariffs and how we present the bill to customers is very different to the way that we would do it, say for example around calculating the fee that a developer needs to pay for connecting to our network and our infrastructure. So the billing requirements are very nuanced, I would say, and high affinity, I think it is certainly my kind of understanding. It is a quite specialised application for metered based billing and doesn't cater so well for what we refer to that kind of that sundry style billing requirement. Our aspiration would be to do all types of billing from a single platform, just because it means that we could then streamline processes, reporting, again just be able to do things like reconcile cash to transaction from a single source would be highly desirable.
Yeah, and so those other obviously completely different types of sort of customers and use cases then are managed out of sort of older, smaller, sort of more manual systems at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, it's in a combination. So combination places. I mean, so if I talk about laboratory, I think their billing is really very basic in terms of the laboratory management system that we run. So that's pretty much standalone. Whereas developer is pretty new. So one thing actually I haven't mentioned, so and it might be a bearing to people on the call, we have invested a lot into Salesforce. So we use Salesforce heavily, and we intend to kind of continue to sort of grow its use. So it started off in the contact center for water and residential customers, but since then we've moved it into water, community engagement, developer customers. We're planning to move trade customers into that. So we've kind of got that single customer platform. With the developer example, we actually ended up using the billing functionality that sat within Salesforce because there was nowhere else to put it. So one of the things we'll again be looking to understand is, okay, well, if we can find a new billing capability, then how do we actually kind of get, if you like, all our billing processes and functionality in a single spot, which actually might mean we're going to rework some of those decisions that we made at a point in time.
Got you. So, last question on that then. If a potential partner has can fulfill that sort of billing requirement for those sort of ad hoc groups as part of this ERP program, are you open to receiving information about that, or does it have to be a, this does everything or nothing kind of response?
Do you want me to take that, Simon?
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
Give you a breath. You've been hammered, you poor fellow. We did release an addenda around this. I can't remember. I think it's either 3 or 4. But there's a couple of spots in the EOI that would be relevant to this. So one is we ask suppliers a question around if your solutions proposed are part of a broader ecosystem. What we're really looking for then is, can they be implemented standalone, or what other functionality could we explore as part of a complete service offering from you? And there's also a section down in the bottom of the tender, I can't remember what number it is now, but it talks about innovation. So if there's something in your sphere of solutions that isn't really in the core of what we've been talking about here, but you think it would be relevant based on not only the documentation provided and what Simon has talked about today, then we'd certainly be keen to understand what that looks like, because it may help shape future activities that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. That's useful. Appreciate that.
All right, we'll just jump to Alex before I'll answer Chris's question after that. So go, Alex.
Thanks, Kim. Simon, it refers probably back a couple of questions ago in relation to, you referred to about 200 subcontractors. So in relation to works management and workflow, is the intention to have external subcontractors accessing the information? So previously you talked about how information is pushed back to urban utilities. Is the intention here to look for an EAM that you can go all the way down to the end user or worker, so that information both internally and external contractors are in the same system?
Yeah, look, so perhaps if I answer that question in terms of requirements, how I think I would talk about it. So absolutely we want to see all work. So today we don't see all work. We don't see the work being performed by subcontractors. We don't know when it's actually happening. We don't see the location of their teams and their people. What we'd like in a future state is to have complete visibility of all work as it's occurring. Now, we could potentially look to do that through, I guess, through our permitting process. So force all workers through the same permitting process, so you know when they turn up, when they're actually starting work on the asset, because then that will give you observability from a control perspective. Now, does that mean that all the subcontractors need to use our systems and our technology to achieve that? I think that's a question mark. Yeah, I think, you know, the way that, talking to kind of Kim about this yesterday, probably the way we can think about it is we've absolutely got a set of user numbers for what today looks like in urban utilities, but we've probably got to make sure we've got that growth headroom to say that if we did want to onboard all of our subcontractors onto our systems in a future point, we absolutely want to know that we've got that scalability in there. But at the moment, I would say we were kind of open to the idea of, you know, there are a number of different ways you can sort of holistically plan the work and get observability of when the work's happening and who's doing it. You know, it could be for a portal solution, it could be for, you know, anyway, you guys are software experts, so I'm sure you can already kind of wave a bunch of solutions at us for that particular problem. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, mostly. So
Okay.
this is the numbers that are currently in the EOI in terms of engagement